right, all right. Let's get rocking. It's Irish Breakdown time. It is the Irish Breakdown podcast. I am
Dude,
Vince
did you
D'Addario.
watch like a couple Matthew McConaughey movies this week? Because that's like the third time you've done that. All right intro.
All right.
Did you watch like Ghosts of Girlfriend's Past or something like that on Tuesday? Or
Dude, that's Dazed and Confused all over, man.
Oh, okay.
I love
Okay.
me some Dazed and Confused.
Okay.
Although I haven't watched it in a while. I might have to break that one back out. But it is Friday, and that means we're doing the Thursday show today because of our unbelievable Wednesday mailbag that we had, where we raised over $10,000 for local charities, and we now have a new problem, Brian, and it's finding ways to spend this money.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would say that.
I've been on the phone all night last night, today, trying to find groups to work with. We have started to do it though. So we actually
absolutely
we have already made we bought about 6 carts worth of food and clothes last night for Hannah's House, which is in the South Bend area, which is a place that works with women and children. That just was there today, dropped off a couple turkeys, some stuffing, some pies. We're going to get them some fresh produce. We were going to buy them produce last night, but the dates were a little sketchy as far as it being available by Thanksgiving. So I let them know we would do that early next week just to make sure they had more fresh produce. Made a big drop off last night to Hope Ministries, which is a homeless shelter in town. And then this morning we dropped off, 50 pounds of hamburger and about 40 pounds of chicken there as well. So we're already starting, but we got a long way to go.
Long way to go. We got some irons in the fire as far as some people to talk to, and we're going to make good on every dime that was donated to
we had
Irish
a
Breakdown.
big request that was made from Faith Mission, which is in Elkhart. So we're going to do a big, there was like I think it was like 200 pounds of ham. So we're going to knock out a good chunk of that today. But just again, thank you all so much. Actually, the food that I dropped off last night, they actually used some of it already today to provide lunch. So so that was awesome. So thank you all again for that. Very, 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 very much.
Yeah,
you're keeping me busy these next couple of days, and I'm loving every second of it. Second of it. So, but there's some Georgia Tech Notre Dame talk we still have to do today, and that's what people are here for.
No question. And this is a meaningful game for Notre Dame. Look, we talked about last week, this being last week's game being the kind of the last hurdle, right, to get over for the season. But you still got to play these games. And if you have any desire to be in the college football playoff, you've got to play well, and you've got to show up. I mean, you can't just, win by a touchdown, win by a field goal. That's not good enough. That's just not good. Even if you don't have your sights on college football playoff, if you are who you think you are, if you are who we think you are, you've got to win, and you've got to win convincingly against teams you should win convincingly against. Okay. But we do have some super chats that I want to get to before we dive too far into the topic. Brian, Tony jumping in here. Thank you, Tony. Really appreciate it. There's a lot of rumors floating around that Notre Dame is sitting third for Nwankpa. Any truth to this, says Brian Swami.
I was surprised by that, Tony. I don't know if I buy that or not, to be completely honest with you. So we'll see. It's that time of the year where people got to put out the recruiting stories to make sure that people are clicking and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if that is it the reason or not. I have not heard. I will certainly do some digging, but right now I've obviously kind of been busy with a few other things, but that would surprise me a little bit. That's not the intel that I've been told. I'll try to reach out to some contacts this weekend and kind of see where things stand on that. But that would surprise me, especially Ohio State just landed Sonny Styles in the 2023 class, and they're recruiting him to play the same position that Xavier Nwankpa is going to play.
Good point. That's a really good point.
So that would make that even more surprising for me.
And then Corey D with the super chat. Thank you, Corey. He's got a comment, and then our thoughts on the comment. He says, if Marcus Freeman turns down head coaching jobs over the next 2 years, then we will know that there is in fact an agreement that took place that he will replace Kelly. Your thoughts?
I would say, well, no, it depends on what jobs he turns down. Listen, let me explain. We talked about this the other day. Marcus Freeman is an Ohio kid that played at Ohio State, who's coached in the states of Indiana, Ohio. I mean, that's been his career, right? And that's part of the reason he turned down the job at at LSU was partly because of what Notre Dame did, and partly because of the hard work that Brian Kelly put in, and we have given Brian Kelly a ton of credit for that. This is not a comment meant to take anything away from what Coach Kelly did, because what they did was they did a great job. But it did factor in to a degree that he would rather stay in the Midwest. You know, his family's here. He's got 6 kids. His wife's family's in Ohio. They're both from Ohio. So I don't see him. I don't know. I just don't see him taking like the LSU job. And look, but this is what we're gonna have to do, right? We're gonna have to live with this every time there's a coach that's fired. Every time there's, it's are they gonna come after Marcus Freeman? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that Marcus Freeman is necessarily going to do that. Marcus Freeman is a really smart guy, and smart guys understand that any job is not just the right move, because you take the wrong job and all of a sudden
your career has flatlined.
You got to start over again.
Right.
He goes to LSU and fails. He's back to where he is right now.
I mean, look at like Lane Kiffin, for example. I mean, his career has been because he had to start over. I mean, yeah. Yep.
Right. And we see that all the time. I mean, we see coaches go through that all the time. So I just, Brett Bielema, look what he had to go through when he failed at Arkansas, right? I mean, you got to take the right job. It's got to be right fit. And he's young enough where he doesn't have to rush into a job.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because he's younger than me. Isn't he in his 30s?
He's 35, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a lot
so
younger
he's
than me.
definitely young. And so he's 35. There's no need for him to rush into a job. And I don't know if LSU's a really good job. I don't think it's quite as good of a job as some people think it is. We were debating this at Irish Breakdown on the message board yesterday. People saying it's an elite job, and they make a good case for it. Great talent base, great facilities. It's a school that spends a lot of money, but there's some other reasons that I think don't make it an elite job. And when you look at potentially Penn State could be coming open here in the next few years, Michigan could be coming open. Ryan Day is always going to be a hot commodity.
Sure.
With NFL teams, and the guy that he works for now is potentially done in 2
and
3
he would
years.
be a hot commodity as well. Probably, I would assume that his name's going to get thrown around this offseason, depending on
it already is.
I mean,
it'll happen every time there's a job. It's going to be, are they going to? So look, I don't know what Marcus Freeman's going to do. I don't think Marcus Freeman knows what he's going to do. I think right now Marcus Freeman's job is on stopping Jahmyr Gibbs and maybe Jeff Sims, depending on if he plays or not. But to your point, I think the longer he stays, the longer this offseason is going to tell us a lot. Because if he stays in Notre Dame, that means he, and we hear that he actually was pursued by LSU or USC or both, and we're going to have an idea that, okay, he's doing the smart thing and not just taking any job.
Yeah.
And that's going to tell me he's going to stay. But, I also think it's maybe a little bit too early to know for sure that he's got the secret agreement in place. But I do think, Corey, that the longer it goes on, I think probably the more that I'll think that could be the case, to your point. But it also could just be that there's not a job out there. Brian Kelly did this in 2008. Brian Kelly was pursued by Tennessee after the 2008 season. And he's like, yeah, that's not a great job right now. And at the time it wasn't, because he saw bigger jobs. Because we all knew when Jack Swarbrick got hired in 2008, he was going to give Charlie Weiss the 29 – or when Jack Swarbrick got hired, everybody sees he's going to give Charlie Weiss one more season, and then if he didn't turn it around, and also Michigan was at the time was kind of going through some stuff with Rich Rod, so there was better jobs available, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to stay here."
Especially to him, because if you look at you could make the same argument for Brian Kelly that you're making for Marcus Freeman as far as location. Right?
Yes, Brian Kelly was a much better fit for Michigan or Notre Dame than he would have been at Tennessee.
Exactly, because he look at his head coaching stops,
and not only that, but just think about kind of what he likes, how he likes to or doesn't like to deal with the media. He was never a guy that was how he is now to the Notre Dame media is not a whole lot different than how he was to the Cincinnati media. He doesn't like to be questioned. He doesn't like to be challenged. That's not going to fly in Tennessee. If you think we're hard on you, go coach at an SEC school. Yeah, that's that thinks they should be a national title contender. And
immediate Notre Dame is not hard.
Yeah, and that's why Kelly. I think Tennessee sometimes it's not at all. But that's okay. Yeah, that's part of what you do. What factors into making a head coaching decision is, and that's a smart thing to consider too. This isn't a knock on Brian Kelly. That's a legitimate, thoughtful thing to look at, because what happens is it's like what Steve Sarkisian's going through right now at Texas. They're not going to fire him after 1 year, but can the boosters and the fan base and the media become so toxic towards you that it prevents you from making the moves you need to make to get it turned around? Because coaches don't want to coach for you because I'm hearing that they're already wanting to fire you, or recruits aren't going to come play for it because, hey, I hear they're going to fire you already, And that's the thing about it is Notre Dame was very patient with Brian Kelly. I think the Notre Dame media some of them are now 12 years into being patient with him to compete for a championship, but a lot of people, knew that he had to turn things around, and I don't know if he would have gotten that same opportunity to, look, there's no SEC school that would have kept him after 4-8 season, or a 12-1 surrounded by 8-5s and 9-4s and the collapse of 2014. Like, Notre Dame's been very patient with him, and that's another reason why you have to be thoughtful of what's the better job. And that's why Notre Dame's a good job, is for the most part, unless you're just a total disaster like Ty Willingham was, they're going to give you time to get things right. Notre Dame's 12 years without a title, and he's got the job until he doesn't want it anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely correct.
That doesn't work anywhere else. I mean, Mark Richt had a phenomenal record at Georgia, and they were ready to run him out of town despite having been a couple years removed from being a play away from playing for a title. So
right.
It's a whole different animal down there, and that's why coaches have to make smart decisions, and why some of those jobs may seem enticing, but in reality, it may not be.
We have one more super chat to get to, and then we'll dive into Georgia Tech, most likely. We've got Matt Baisley with the super chat. Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate it. He says, haven't caught a live show in a bit. New puppy. Congratulations on the new puppy. Great job on the fundraiser. Truly inspiring. Also, great job picking a cap, the flex cap that fits my head. First baseball cap to fit in actual decades.
Nice.
That's awesome. I will say the flex caps are awesome.
Yeah, that would be this hat. So this is actually, I just got mine the other day. So this is it really does fit nicely. This one I just bought. I wore it partly during the show the other day, and I had to take it off because it's still fitting to my big old head, and it was starting to get a little tight. And I'm like, okay, because they got to kind of break in and mold around your head, and it was kind of
no doubt.
I got a big head, and I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that literally. I have a big head, and so it takes a while for hats to kind of stretch out enough to fit on my head. But yeah, it's a really comfortable hat.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. I'm sorry I wasn't laughing at your big head. I was laughing at this comment right here from Toe
Yeah, I saw
sorry
that.
I'm late. Had to make an annual pilgrimage to source a McRib. It was glorious. The taste of barbecue sauce, pressed pork parts, and regret. That was the last part was the best part, and regret. That was great.
I can't believe people actually eat McRibs.
It looks so gross.
It does. Even the commercials where they're trying to make it look as good as possible look disgusting.
It just looks so gross. The pressed pork. I mean, that's what it is. No, sorry.
Yep.
Can't
anyway,
do it.
let's move on quickly. Let's talk some Georgia Tech football because I'm
please.
Hey, congrats on the new puppy, by the way. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
That's awesome.
No question. Yeah. No question. So we normally this show is on Thursdays, but normally the way we break it down is we talk about matchups that we're keeping our eye on, then we talk some keys to the game, and then we give our prediction.
Well, and I still like to talk about what's at stake. I mean, you kind of went on your little soliloquy, and then just
Then we went to super chats, and I got completely sidetracked. So yes, please let's talk about what's at stake.
Well, and just kind of how this game needs to play out, because as you look around the college football schedule, we have an article at Irish Breakdown that talks about the games this weekend that are going to impact Notre Dame. I mean, and there's a lot. I mean, so first of all, Notre Dame's 8th in the current ranking.
Correct.
And they need to be focused on the teams ahead of them and the teams behind them. There are still 2 teams behind them that, depending on how things go, could make some noise, that being Oklahoma State and Wake Forest. I mean, look, if Wake Forest goes out there this weekend and curb stomps Clemson, that's gonna catch some people's attention.
Sure.
And so,
despite when you the fact that Clemson is who they are, because
right, but
they are still who they
Clemson.
are. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It's and they are 7-3. So if you just look at it that way, but the games that I broke down in the article today, obviously Ohio State and Michigan State, and I kind of talk about, who you need to cheer for. And I mean, when it comes to Ohio State and Michigan State, both of those teams are ahead of Notre Dame. One of them is going to fall behind Notre Dame. So you're automatically going up one spot this weekend.
But here's my thought process on that, though, right? I mean, I don't know who you said in your article, but I would say you root for Ohio State, because if Michigan State wins, I think they win out. I think they win out, and they're going to stay above you. They're going to stay ahead of you.
For me, it was about the thought of, I think a Big Ten team's going to get in. So which one do you want to play? That's the way you have to look at it. Are you looking for Big Ten chaos? If that's the case, then root for Michigan State, root for Ohio, because I don't think it's guaranteed that Michigan State wins out, because I don't think it's guaranteed they're going to beat Penn State, and I don't think it's guaranteed they're going to beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game either.
I mean, obviously, the bigger upset would be Michigan State over Ohio State. That's right. Obviously the bigger upset.
But it's more about, okay, if a Big Ten team's going to get in, because I don't think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State next week. I don't think they have a prayer. So then it comes down to, well, then that kind of answers your question is, you don't want to play Ohio State, then root for Michigan State. If you don't care, then root for, then whatever. Just to me, because like you said, if a Big Ten team's going to get in, then
Well, I would much rather play.
I personally would always rather play. I would personally rather play Ohio State, because I'm a believer that, hey, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. And if Notre Dame
Michigan
gets
State
in there,
beats them, isn't Michigan State better?
Not necessarily. They won that game, but you don't evaluate yourself as a program against Michigan State. You evaluate yourself as a program against Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama,
Correct.
Oklahoma. That's more of where I'm coming from.
Okay.
But a playoff win is a playoff win. It's not like beating a New Year's Six Bowl, because to your point, if you play Michigan State and beat them, well, they'd beat Ohio State, right? So, but I've always just kind of had that. I want to play Mount Union, right? When I was coaching D3, if I'm at Notre Dame, I want to play Bama, I want to play Georgia, and that's how you know where you are in regards to those programs. But if you're looking for the best matchup, then root for Michigan State. I don't think Michigan State has a chance. They have the worst pass defense in the country.
You're right.
Literally,
yes.
They rank 130th in the nation in pass defense, and they haven't faced anything close to what they're about to face this weekend at receiver.
No question.
Then you've got number 10 Wake Forest at Clemson. Alabama plays Arkansas. I don't see Arkansas pulling off that upset, but hey, you know what? At least paying attention. And then you got SMU at Cincinnati. That's going to be an interesting one. And then you have number 3 Oregon at number 23 Utah.
See, there's two possible upsets right there.
Yes. So two possible upsets plus one of the 4 and 7 Ohio State, Michigan State. So, I mean, there's a chance that Notre Dame could jump way up. But the reason this Georgia Tech game is important, and the reason it's so important that they play to their potential, is because if you go out there and beat Georgia Tech, 30-27 or 30-20 even,
right?
And Oklahoma State goes out there and pounds Texas Tech on the road. Look, Texas Tech is 6-4. Georgia Tech's 3-7. If Oklahoma State has a far more convincing victory than Notre Dame, what's to keep them from saying, if Clemson goes out there and if Wake Forest goes out there and smacks Clemson's 7-3, Georgia Tech's 3-7. What's gonna, what's gonna prevent them from having them leap Notre Dame? And now, if Notre Dame goes out there and smacks Georgia Tech the way a playoff team should beat a 3-7 team,
right?
Then I think they stay put. So, then it's like, okay, well, if those upsets happen, how far do you climb? And that's going to be the key for Notre Dame. I mean, I don't see 1 losing. I don't see 2 losing. I mean, Georgia plays. They play like some AA team or something like that. This is their bye. Right. The Charleston Southern.
Yeah, they have a bye.
Isn't that where Autry Denson is?
I think it is.
Yeah,
I think it is actually.
So, they're not going to lose. I don't see Bama losing to Arkansas. I don't see Michigan losing to Maryland, and then one of the 2 Big Ten teams. So there's going to be 4 teams definitely ahead of them. But there's a chance this weekend Notre Dame could jump up to 6, 5 or 5 even, depending on they're going to leap the loser of the Ohio State and Michigan State game. But then if Cincinnati loses, if Oregon loses, and all of a sudden you could jump up to 5. Now you're in striking distance. But you have to dominate your next 2 opponents. Otherwise, they're going to say, hey, look, Notre Dame went 11-1. They beat a bunch of mediocre teams in mediocre fashion.
Right.
Whereas Oklahoma State's out there pounding people. That's exactly right. It is statement time for Notre Dame. And it's not about the final score. it's not about, you put 20 on them in the fourth quarter and you win 40-10. It's about you have to dominate them from start to finish. You can't have the senior day, blues.
Yeah, which they've had.
Right.
I mean,
you can't, you can't have we're going to start off slow, or you can't have we're going to jump out fast and then take our foot off the gas and win 28-3, right? You need to come out there and you need to pound them for 4 quarters. That doesn't mean running it up. It doesn't mean running flea flickers. It doesn't mean running, trick plays. It means you do not let up. If you put your backups in the game, you do not let up.
Right.
And that's going to be the key. They're going to have to convincingly beat Georgia Tech this weekend. That's
absolutely. And you still hope for some upsets ahead of you. I mean, if you're a Notre Dame fan, that's the goal every week. You got to take care of your business. You can't control that,
right? Like,
you take care of your business.
That's what you can
control. And then you root for chaos. Yep. I mean, that's really the only
chaos doesn't matter if you don't handle your business.
Absolutely.
That's
absolutely
the point, right? That's the
and
point.
Handling your business is not a one possession win. That's
or even a 28-3 win over a team that's been giving up 37.8 points per game in their last 6 games.
No doubt.
It's about convincing. You got to prove that we are one of the best teams in the country. That's what Notre Dame has to prove to the country this year and this weekend. And they have to beat. I mean, they have to pound Georgia Tech, because what's everybody saying? Well, Georgia Tech's played a lot of close games. Okay, so if you beat them by 10-14, then you're just like every other team that's beat them. Mm-hmm. You have to show, they've lost a lot of close games, but that was until they played us. And we smashed them. I mean, because that's what Pitt did, right? Pitt's ranked. Pitt beat them by like 31. So that's what Notre Dame needs to do. They need to absolutely dominate them.
Absolutely agreed. So we talked about matchups.
I just want to point out too that Brendan Cordial is with me on this. Thank you for the super chat, Brendan, and I'm with you on it. To be the man, you got to beat the man. Woo! Some Ric Flair stuff right there, Vince.
See, normally I'm the one acting like a fool.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I mean, how am I, as a business owner, as a sports fan, as a man in America, gonna have someone put a Ric Flair thing out there and not respect that?
And you did it. I mean, I'm impressed. It's not like you normally. It's just I'm just saying it's not like you.
Saying. Well, you know what, Vince? That is like me. It's just not like me on the show. And you know darn well that's just like me, just not on the show.
I do know that. All right. Johnny Jimenez also has a super
I'm still fired up from the conversation we had with Malik and Reggie the other day. And
I know
Oscar
you
McBride, so I'm still a little fired up from that. So, yeah.
I enjoyed watching it. So, there you go. Johnny Jimenez, thank you very much, Johnny, for the super chat. He says, y'all talked about a comp for Kyron recently. I think a great comp for him is Arian Foster. Your thoughts?
He was pretty good in draft day.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say that's
underrated
an underrated movie? Mm-hmm. I really enjoy that movie.
I watch it every year before the draft.
I watch it whenever it's available for free on the streaming services or whatever. I throw it up. I really dig that movie. I really do. I'm sure none of it's not real, but like how things go down or whatever. Right. But
it's not how it goes down, but it's still a fun movie.
I enjoy that movie, man. I really do. So, getting off topic, but and they had some big names in there too. Mm-hmm. But you're right, Arian Foster did do very well in that movie.
Now, to answer your question, Johnny, I don't know if I could say I watched or paid a close enough attention to Arian at Tennessee to have an opinion on that. To be honest with you, I could pop in some film here while we're talking and answer it later. But I just, because I'm told I don't watch much NFL, haven't for a long time. So I don't remember him enough with the Texans to be able to say, I always remember Aaron he's retired.
Is he retired? Okay.
Yeah, he's retired. Yeah. I mean, I always remember him as like a bigger looking guy. I don't know how well his game compares. I'd have to go look. So, but good question. I mean, I like that people are thinking about that. Like, what are some good comps and things like that? But
for sure.
Yeah, I was doing a stat last night. Do you know that according to Pro Football Focus, 79%. It's data collection. Pro Football Focus.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the good part of Pro Football Focus, not the bad part. Like their grade system is garbage. They do not have Kyron Williams as a top 50 running back. So that just tells you everything you need to know about their grading system. Their data collection is good though. They have him down 79% of his yards have come after contact this year.
I saw that. Yeah, I think you tweeted it, didn't you?
I did.
That's where
it was late last night. I figured you were in bed though.
Yeah, I did see it
because Tyler James. Because I put a thing out yesterday about Notre Dame's run game, because there's all these people talking about how, their run game's so much better. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's gotten better, but it helps when you play bad teams.
Absolutely.
And the tweet in question was, because like this is exactly what I was afraid of, is they're going to come out and beat up a bunch of bad, and we talked about this during the bye week.
Yeah.
They're going to beat up a bunch of bad teams, and that's going to be Brian Kelly's excuse to say, see, everything's good, we don't need to make any changes, everything's fine, we just need to coach a little better and play a little harder.
There was a question in the press conference on Thursday that I did not hear yesterday live, but I heard it as it was being played back on the radio, where a media member just totally lobbed a softball up to Brian Kelly about the offensive line is improving, how much of that is accredited to, Jeff Quinn. And it wasn't even that kind of a question. It was, clearly Jeff Quinn is doing a great job, and how have you seen him, and blah, blah, blah. And it was
like a very leading question.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have to text me. You're going to have to text
beautiful.
me who it was that asked that question.
You could guess, but I will text it to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Well,
but so I put it out last night. So I put this tweet out yesterday where it said, look, Notre Dame has played six teams that rank in the top 75 in rushing defense. Only 2 in the top 50, by the way. In those games, they averaged 92.3 yards per game, 2.8 yards per carry. Their best performance was against Navy, and they only went for 150 against Navy.
Right.
They've played 4 teams that rank 81 or lower, which is the bottom third in the country, and they've averaged 223.8 yards per game in those games. Now, another fan, and I thought it was really good response, he said, well, hey, part of that is brought down by the Wisconsin game, and they only had 3 yards. And so, well, yeah, the only top 25 run defense they played all year held them to 3 yards, okay? But even if you take that game out, there are other games against top 75 run defenses, which is like Navy, Cincinnati, who's not even a great rush defense this year, and Purdue, who ranks 75th. They only averaged 110 yards rushing. And I think Toledo's top 75 as well. They only averaged 110 yards rushing. That's a pretty low number. Then I looked at Pro Football Focus, and 773 of their 1,074 rush yards in the last 5 games have come after contact. That's 72%. And then you look at a whole year, and then Tyler James asked a good question from South Bend Tribune. He said, sounds like a lot. And then asked for kind of context. What are some other teams at? And so I said last year Notre Dame was at 55.6, 55.7 in 2019, 49.7 in 2018, and then 59.4 in 2017. And then if you look at Ohio State, they're at 61%, Michigan State 65, Bama's at 60, Oklahoma State's at 62. Then I also looked at like the top 10 teams in the country, and like they're all in like the 50s and 40s. There's nobody close to 72. And it just kind of goes to show just how much of Notre Dame's yardage is coming after contact. And in past years, like Josh Adams got a lot of yards after contact in 2017, but it was like downfield contact where they're hitting him by the side as he's running past him. That's not what's happening this year.
No.
It's them getting hit in the backfield,
right,
and making people miss.
It shows 2 things. Number 1, that the offensive line isn't where they need to be, and number 2, how elite the running back room is.
It is.
I mean, seriously,
we don't use that word a lot, but it absolutely is.
Yeah,
it's an elite group right now, and they're playing like an elite group. And and look, they've been helped by the fact that the competition has gotten weaker. Because look, I don't care how good you are as a running back. When Jordan Davis hits you 3 yards in the backfield, it's going to look a lot different than when a guy from North Carolina or Virginia does it.
Right.
And that's an offensive line problem. So yes, the offensive line has gotten better, but it's not like all of a sudden this great group, but that's not how Brian Kelly's going to spin it. And that's not how other people are spinning it. And that's the frustrating thing. But in this game, you have to come out, and they need that to be true. They need the offensive line to play well, because that's going to be the key to Notre Dame handling their business this weekend. If they give Kyron Williams just room, and I'm not talking about holes, just don't let him get drilled as he's getting the ball. Him and Logan Diggs and Chris Tyree will go off this weekend.
I agree.
Because there's nothing that Georgia Tech does on. It's not like they have, like North Carolina was pretty decent against the pass. They just weren't good against the run. And Notre Dame took advantage of that. Georgia Tech's not good at either. And Notre Dame has to take advantage of that. And Kyron needs to be a big part of that.
No question. Absolutely agree with you. I think the run game could be special in this game. And And that isn't necessarily saying I'm on board with the offensive line. I'm saying I'm on board with the fact that Georgia Tech generally runs a 3 front, and it should be an opportunity for Notre Dame to get some yards. And when you have the backfield that Notre Dame has, and they're going to be, once you're past that first level and you're going up against linebackers in space, I will take Notre Dame's 3 backs, their top 3 backs against anybody that Georgia Tech has in space. I mean, that it is a Joe versus Joe at times. And when that's the case, I'm going to take Notre Dame.
Right.
And so that's why I think Notre Dame can have a big game on the ground. I really do.
So, yeah, Vince, it needs to be a dominant performance. And I'm very defensively. I think this weekend we're going to see Notre Dame really shut down Georgia Tech. I think this defense is starting to peak. And the difference between, as Notre Dame's played some bad teams, the difference is these bad teams can still score. And so the defense is, to me, and everybody's talking about how losing Brendan Armstrong, and that was a big loss. But you don't go from 40 points a game to 3 just because of the quarterback. Right? I mean, they still had receivers. They still had the same line. They still had talent. You held them to 3, and you're also missing your best player and 2 other starters. The defense is starting to play at a high level. It's now 2 games in a row that Notre Dame has held opponents to under 10 points. That hasn't happened in a while, I don't believe, where they had back-to-back games and they held opponents to single digits. And
no touchdowns. I mean, no touchdowns in 2 straight games. I mean, look, you're still playing D1 schools. I mean,
actually, it happened last year. I forgot. Yeah, Louisville and Pitt last year.
Okay.
They gave up 7-3, but Louisville scored a touchdown, to your point.
There you go.
Notre Dame has not given up a touchdown since the North Carolina game.
And I think that's a big deal. It's hard to shut teams out, okay? And it's hard to shut them out of the end zone, all right? And I realized that who was it that missed a couple field goals or whatever? Okay, you didn't get them in the end zone though, and that's in something, okay? Because 3 points.
Cincinnati.
I can't remember who it was. I thought more recently there was a missed field goal. I could be wrong. I could be mixing games up in my head. It's the end of the week. But
I get it.
But bottom line is you're holding teams out of the end zone, and that's huge. And I mean, there's times when somebody just gets loose and scores a touchdown or what have you. I mean, you look at these 1AA teams against, big time teams, they're still putting the ball in the end zone, right? So I don't care, what the level of play that Notre Dame is going up against with, but keeping teams out of the end zone 2 games in a row is huge.
Well, and look, they've held 4 opponents now to 13 or fewer points. In Clark Lee's first year, he only did that twice the whole season. Now it was against Syracuse and against Florida State late in the year. And this defense has done that 4 times. And they've done that 4 times against a couple teams that have good offenses. I mean, they did that to a Purdue team that came into that game scoring 40 points and has since scored 28 at Nebraska, 40 against Michigan State, 31 against Ohio State. Notre Dame held them to 13, including a scoring drive for Purdue where they got the ball in Notre Dame territory. If you remember, Vince, their first field goal drive, because Notre Dame got sacked and then had a big loss. Remember that? Like first play of the game, they got sacked. They punted a ball as a short punt by Jay Bramlett, and Purdue received it, I think, at the 48-yard line, like Notre Dame's 48-yard line. And you talk about Cincinnati, got 10 points on drives that started in the red zone. This defense has played a lot better than people realize, and I just feel like this Georgia Tech team, no matter who plays quarterback, is pretty one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And as long as they don't if Jeff Sims plays, and I don't know yet that he's going to play. I tried looking that up today, and it sounds like, it's still a question mark. But if he plays, they've got to not let him do what Braxton Burmeister did, which is just kind of move the chains with your legs. But I really feel like this defense is poised to have a big day, and they're playing at a very high level. And look, they need at least one side of the ball to be playing elite football going into the final rankings. That's going to help, because if you're just kind of good on both sides of the ball, like Oklahoma, when they were getting in with a crap defense, they were getting it because they had an elite offense. You don't see many non-conference champions getting in with like just kind of okay on both sides of the ball. They got to prove that they're playing elite somewhere. They're going to dominate Stanford next week. They've got to dominate Georgia Tech, because if they can do to Georgia Tech what I think they're capable of doing to Georgia Tech defensively, all of a sudden you look at all of a sudden Notre Dame's margin of victory on the season keeps going up, and that matters. because there was a time recently where Notre Dame's the difference in points per game of what they were scoring and what they were allowed was less than 10 points because the defense was up around 23, 24. Part of that was because the offense had given up some touchdowns. But now the defense is down to 20 and a half, and it's actually less than that if you take away offensive points. And the offense is still around 32. But the offense has kind of gone down a couple times, but the defense is going down faster. And so now they're at 12-point difference.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to grow that even more this weekend. And I think the defense is going to do it. Now it's about, can the offense step up and do their part?
Right.
I don't know what it is, Vince. I'm just confident that this team's going to come out tomorrow and play well.
I do. And I don't know why. I don't know if I have any actual basis for it. But I feel good about it too. Yeah. And I do feel good for the most part about the leadership of this team. And I don't know that they're going to allow them to come out flat on senior day. And I don't know. I don't have. Of course, I'm not worried about Notre Dame losing, okay? But I feel like they're going to come out and do the things that they need to do to make us at least somewhat happy. I don't know if they'll ever score as many points as I want them to offensively. I'll still complain that they left some points out on the field. But I do think that they're going to come out and they're going to do some things offensively. And that's one of the things that I need to see. Again, though, even though I'm confident that they're going to do it, I still want to see it. I still want to see them take some of those shots down the field a little bit more often. I still want to see the creativity. I still want to see them spreading the ball around.
Do to a team like this what you're supposed to do to a team like this. I do want to respond to a comment. There's a lot of going on in the chat. Here's a comment from Andrew Nelson. He says, we only have two. No, that's not the one. Here we go. He goes, let's not pretend Notre Dame hasn't, the bet against weak competition time and time again historically. I don't care about historically. I care about the current era of Notre Dame football. And then he says, I think we never have a guaranteed win unless it's against like 2-9 Ball State. Notre Dame has won 39 straight
40
games.
40 now.
Are you sure? So it's 40 straight games.
It got to 40 this past Saturday.
Yeah, 40 straight games against unranked opponents. Let's not pretend that Ty Willingham is still the head football coach here. Okay.
Right.
Let's not pretend that we're still in the first 5 years of Brian Kelly's tenure. There's a lot of things we can still be critical of this program getting to the next step, but let's not do stuff like that because that's nonsense. I mean, and it's the longest streak in the country, by the way. To say that Notre Dame the bet against weak competition, we were pissed last week about a 28-3 win.
Right, 25
over
point
Virginia
margin,
a road win over a 6-3 team.
Yes, right.
Notre Dame is now. Have there been some clunkers along the way? Yeah, there have been. Just like Alabama had one against LSU 2 weeks ago. They beat a crap LSU team 20-14. Right? Georgia a couple years ago lost to a 4-8 Syracuse team. Ohio State got beat one year by 30-something by a 7-6 Purdue team. Okay, let's not act like Notre Dame's not the only program that. But you know what though? The funny thing is that hasn't happened to Notre Dame since 2016. They haven't lost to an unranked opponent since 2016.
When they were 4-8.
Right. So, that's 5 seasons. Now, again, of course, now that I say this, they're going to go out and, lose to Georgia Tech, but I just don't see it. I don't see it. So, yeah, we can be critical of Notre Dame about things that are legitimate critical, but that is not a legitimate criticism of Notre Dame. They do not lose to these type of teams. Right. We're not having a discussion about whether or not they're going to lose to Georgia Tech. That's not even a debate.
Yeah,
are they going to beat them the way they need to beat them? And the fact that I can say, because that's not like us to say that. Like we always like, hey, respect your opponent. No, they're not going to lose to Georgia Tech. How do you know that? Because they've won 40 straight games against teams like Georgia Tech. And and the ugly games, yeah, they've had a couple of them this year, right? But they still found ways to win.
No doubt.
So and they've definitely, as we've gotten later in the season, have been more impressive in those types of victories. So let's be a little bit more accurate with our criticisms of Notre Dame here. So, Vince, I think in order for this to happen, for Notre Dame to win the way they need to win, I think there's 2 or 3 guys on each side of the ball to me that need to step up and have wins.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And to me, all right, that's time to go. All right, so. You know exactly who I just kicked out of the chat, right?
I sure do. I was reading what he was saying, then boom, gone.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I figured that was where that was going.
Time to go.
Yeah.
So there are 2 or 3 players to me on both sides of the ball that have to step up and have big games. And let's break down kind of those guys, Vince. And I'm going to start off with you. Let's go
Okay.
offense. I'm going to start off with you, and let's get into give me a player on offense. We'll go players because I think we both agree that Tommy Rees has to, and Marcus Freeman both have to have great game plans and call good games and stuff like that.
Aggressive game plans.
Yep. So let's look into some players that you think have to really have big games this weekend.
Okay, I will start with Kyron Williams. I'm going to go with the easy softball one. I think that I just think he needs to just keep rolling. Just keep doing your thing. Just keep, dodging dudes in the backfield, making things happen, catching the ball out of the backfield, lining up at slot, being Kyron Williams. I mean, they have to know where 23 is at all times. That if that's not in your defensive game plan against Notre Dame, then you're not doing something right.
Well, they've been facing a lot of that, not doing something right recently.
Right, exactly. So Kyron Williams needs to be Kyron Williams in order for this offense to be who they need to be.
So I'm going to go a little different direction because I'm looking at it not just beating Georgia Tech. I'm going to cheat a little bit, right? So I told you one thing, and I'm going to go in a different direction.
Of course you are.
Because I can. So I feel like one of the other backs has to step up. And the reason I say that is because I'm going to say not just for this game, because I almost kind of assume that Kyron's going to play well this weekend. He's playing at such a high level.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're in a situation where to continue to impress the committee, you have to just show the depth of playmakers. It can't just be Kyron Williams. And I really, I don't know if this is a has to step up, but I want to step up as a Chris Tyree. I'd love to see him kind of become a force because then you really get that 3-headed monster. But I don't care. Ultimately, it doesn't have to be him. That's more of a want, a need. I think they need a second back to step up. And if Tommy Rees can do some creative things when it comes to moving Kyron around and things like that, then perhaps it puts them in a position where Kyron doesn't have to necessarily carry the load. You can move him around, and the defense is because they're going to overreact to him from the start if they're worth anything. What do you do for Tommy Rees if you take advantage of that by then saying, okay, we're gonna put Kyron out, they're gonna vacate the box, they're 3-man front, and we're just gonna hit Chris Tyree or Logan Diggs up on an inside zone, and that's why I say Chris Tyree and just crease that sucker. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
I will say that number one, I agree with you, but number two, the reasoning behind why I agree with you is I also think for the future, I think one of these guys stepping up and kind of taking the role of that next guy in these last couple of games of the season, I think it's somewhat important, right? Because this is the last time you're going to get game film. You're going to get at least 3 more games, right, of game film. And one of these two guys is going to be your number one back going into next year. And I think Chris Tyree has the inside track on that just based on his track record and his age and all that. I get it. You're muted, by the way. But
I was just saying, I don't care who starts next year. They're both going to play.
No. I agree with you. I'm saying I think these last 3 games can sort that out a little bit, and it could give a guy an inside track going into the offseason. That's all. It's not the be all end all. Yeah. But coaches want to see what you do in games, not just what you do in practice and in the offseason. And I think it could be important to one of these guys depending on who steps up the next 3 games.
So Sean Stewart in the chat room just stole my next one, Vince. Sean says, I would like to see Mayer go berserk on Georgia Tech. That's my next one.
Who wouldn't?
I think Michael Mayer is when he is going off, it can make this team so hard to defend because you have to commit so much to him that it just, okay, who's going to cover Kevin Austin? Who's going to cover Lorenzo Styles? Who's going to cover Braden Lindsey? Who's going to cover the backside of the backfield? I would really like to see Michael Mayer just really step up and have a big game because I also feel like if he's playing at a high level, that's going to force Stanford and then their postseason opponents to really have to focus on him, where about a month went by and he was catching balls but not really making a huge impact.
I agree.
And I'm hopefully that this week they start to get him a little bit more involved on stuff down the field. We haven't seen a ton of that. It's usually been like late in quarters, like seams late against Toledo, a seam late against was it North Carolina that they hit him up the seam late in the first half? something like that. Hopefully they can get him some shots down the field. But Michael Mayer is my number 2 guy on offense that has to step up this weekend.
Well, since you didn't go with a specific guy in your first one, I'm going to go with outside receivers. So that's Kevin Austin, Colsey, Braden Lindsey. There's plays to be had on the outside this week. I've just watched too much film of Georgia Tech and watching them let outside receivers get loose. Whether it's zone, whether it's man-to-man, it doesn't matter. Like, it just feels like there's outside receivers getting loose all the time. And, obviously Jack Cohn needs to hit them. But I think this could be a really good game for the outside receivers for Notre Dame. So I'm looking for at least one of those guys, if not all of them, to step up in this game and make some plays down the field.
Yeah, I like that one. I think that was going to be my next one is honestly, for me, it's going to be Braden Lindsey.
Okay.
And it's not so much Georgia Tech because I'm still thinking kind of the future. If they can have a couple games against bad opponents where Braden Lindsey just goes off, jets, reverses, deep shots, now all of a sudden you're like, okay, crap, now we got to defend that. Like Lorenzo's making plays, Kevin Austin's been playing better, you got Mayer, you got Kyron, and now all of a sudden Braden Lindsey's beating you over the top. Like, come on, like, seriously,
this is not fair,
right? So I'd like to see the ball get spread around, and at the heart of all this is Jack Cohn.
100%, yes.
And just get the ball where it needs to go to, get it on time, and throw it, get out there, because I thought they were pretty good throwing the deep ball early. They've gone away from it. He hasn't been as accurate. They haven't taken as many chances. I'd like to see them be aggressive and take some shots and then hit those shots.
Yep.
You got to hit those shots. That's the big key. So that's it for me on offense. Is those are really the guys for me that have to really step up.
And I'm not even going to say the offensive line, because they don't need to be amazing to win this game.
Just like body on a body.
Just body on a body.
That's all they've done all year. Now all of a sudden that's turned into great play, right? Apparently.
Right.
That means they're playing at elite level. Like, oh, no, we don't expect them to drive people off the ball like past lines.
Sucking is the
just don't suck. And then we'll praise your offensive line coach and tell you how great he is and how he should come back. And yes, absolutely. Yep. Totally fair and respectful analysis. Definitely.
So, as I tip over my cup, let's talk about the defensive side.
Well, we got a couple super chats I want to get to here before we get there.
Absolutely, I made a mess. All right. Well,
that's all right. It is what it is. I'll pull up some of these super chats while you
Anthony,
clean up your little mess there. Yeah, Anthony else says this conversation is why IB is the GOAT of CFB shows. BD and Vince dropping stats on cue alongside logic and critically reasoned analysis. Look, people can come to a lot of different conclusions on things, and there's not one right answer. Sometimes there is, but who's the greatest quarterback ever? I mean, there's only one right answer. It's clearly John Elway. But most topics you can have multiple opinions on, but just come with facts and come with analysis and come with data. And if we're up here just throwing out these silly, fanboy takes without any analysis and stuff like that, then we're not worth your time. And like you said, but that's not who we are. We enjoy that because make an argument, but back it up. Where's it coming from? And that's fun. That's what makes football fun.
No doubt. But thanks, Anthony, for the super chat.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. Ryan Michael has our next one. Thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate the super chat. He says, if Notre Dame played Cincinnati this week in a rematch, both teams fully healthy, that's a big one because Notre Dame's missing a lot of dudes.
So Cincinnati.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So fully healthy, what is the score? I think Notre Dame wins by at least 7. I say 31-23. So that's an 8-point win.
First of all, Ryan, I wanted to say thanks to you. Ryan gave a super chat during Wednesday's drive show and also a private donation.
Oh, wow.
He stepped up twice on Wednesday. So we appreciate that very, very much.
That's awesome.
And I appreciate your super chat today. I think Notre Dame wins by, I think your score's fair. I think it may go a little bit more just because I think Cincinnati's run defense hasn't been great down the stretch.
And Notre Dame is better.
And look, and this is the thing. It's like, let's be fair, right? Is some of the hyperbole and some of the hype and some of the praise about the offensive line and Jeff Quinn going way too far? Heck yes. Would we be just as irresponsible to say it's the same line, they're only better because the opponents suck? Yeah, that'd be just as irresponsible and bad analysis as what's some. It's look, this line has gotten better. Joe Alt being in the starting lineup has helped this line get better. Andrew Kristofic being in the starting lineup has helped this line get better.
No doubt.
Kane Madden's bad moments now are not as bad as Kane Madden's bad moments were in September.
And they're fewer in consistency, but they're still there. And
they're there. He's still not playing very well, but he was awful in September. And Jarrett Patterson has not reached his level of last season or the year before, but he's gotten steadily better. But the thing is, they're playing better as a unit, and they're doing what we've been saying all year: just get a body on a body,
right.
And so yes, that is a positive, and so I think that would be enough against Cincinnati's defense to run the ball better than they did in October
And be
against
more balanced.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And I think that they'll be able to throw the ball as well, if not better, than they did. I think Jack Cohn's playing with more confidence. Notre Dame's that's the one area where Notre Dame's line has gotten a lot better, like significantly better, is pass pro.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's been a lot of that's about Joe Alt and Kristofic have really improved, that have solidified the left side of the line. You're just not seeing guys coming off of Joe Alt got beat once against Virginia Tech. Right. And there was one other game where he got beat just once, but it was like that one pass rush, and then he was solid the rest of the way. Like, you can kind of now feel Cohn feels comfortable, just like, okay, I don't need to worry about what's coming here anymore. So I think that would help them against Cincinnati as well. And let's not forget, Notre Dame moved the ball up and down the field on Cincinnati a couple times. They just kept turning the stinking thing over.
Turn the ball over. I mean, yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I think Notre Dame wins. And, I'm not going to be the homer and say they win by double digits, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I think they could.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Score is fair. Yeah. So, Vince, I know you're getting close to some time crunch. So let's get into the defensive players. I'll have you run through your defensive players that you think are need to step up in this.
Yeah. Game. Well, number one, again, it's more group than individual, but you have to have a Jahmyr Gibbs plan, and so it has to be from the linebacking core, because he's a running back.
When Drew White needs a big game. I think him more than anybody else needs.
Yeah,
he's going to be back this week.
Okay,
from what I'm told, he will be back. That's
going to be my next question.
Yeah.
So the combination of Drew White and Bo Bauer, whoever happens to be at middle, you've got to contain this kid, because they're going to be matchups where it's 1v1. And you're going to have to win some of those matchups, because this kid's electric. I mean, he is electric. And I know we don't necessarily do a special teams version of all of this, but if they kick it to him, then Brian Polian needs to be fired.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I don't care. Kick it into the end zone every time. That's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because this kid is so good in the return game. And so that's my first one is Drew White, Bo Bauer combination against Gibbs. You have to, and I know that's a matchup kind of a thing, but at the same time, good Lord, you have to contain that kid. He's good. He's really good.
He's averaging 26 yards a return this year.
Yeah.
And he just took one back to the house last week against Boston College.
So good.
So yeah, he's really good. He's really good. Anybody else on defense? I think Cam Hart's one.
Yeah,
he has not played great in recent games. He's got to get back on track.
But I think this is an opportunity for him to get back on the horse. And I think he's going to have some opportunities for a little bit of open field tackling against Sims and potentially against Gibbs. And he struggled with that in the past. I want to see him just light somebody up in the open field, on a third down. Just make the tackle, bro. Like, that's all I want you to do. And so I agree with you. I think Cam Hart could be a big one. And then the defensive ends, and I'll pick on the defensive ends, but I want to keep Sims in the pocket, and that's about contain. And so that's why I'm using the outside guys as kind of what I'm talking about here. Don't let him get out. Don't let him, because, again, Notre Dame has issues sometimes with mobile quarterbacks. Don't let him get mobile. That's the biggest thing. Don't let him get mobile.
I think for me, somebody along the defensive line has to step up and have a big game, not name Isaiah Foskey. And whether that's Jason Adamiola, who's just been so steady this season, Myron's back. It was Riley Mills last week, because I think Georgia Tech's going to probably follow the same blueprint that Virginia had last week, which is don't let Isaiah Foskey take the game over. Just double him and make somebody else beat you. And, that worked last week for Notre Dame because other guys stepped up. Riley Mills stepped up. Justin Adamiola stepped up. Bo Bauer on some pressures. I mean, they doubled Isaiah Foskey almost the whole game, and other guys, and they said, somebody else is going to have to beat us. And they were like, oh, okay, we got you. That's going to have to happen again this week, I think Myron is a guy that Myron strikes me as the kind of guy who's either going to be he's going to really struggle this game or just going to go off. And the reason I say that is of all the players on the team, he's going to have some emotions before this game that are going to be unique. And what I mean by that is This is a young man who's going to senior day who lost his father at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And that's going to hit him deep on Saturday. And knowing Myron the way I do, I have a feeling his reaction is going to be, this is for you, Dad. And it's going to just be, it's going to be fun to watch. I could be completely wrong on that, but I just have a feeling he's going to go off this weekend. And that's one of my picks to click, so to speak, for the game this weekend. And it's also important because they need him. If he can crash the edge and be good setting the edge in the run game, that's going to make it a lot less comfortable for both Jeff Sims and Jahmyr Gibbs. And so practically, that's an important thing as well. Not just emotionally and great story, but practically, they need him to step up and be effective this weekend on the edge.
Love it. I love all those pick. I'll click to pick or pick to click or whatever you said. I like those. I'm all for it. So, Brian, let's move into our predictions. It's about that time because literally time is running out on me. And so we need to get to our predictions. It's funny. I forgot completely what my prediction was yesterday when I turned in my prediction to you, and then I wrote down a new one, and they were identical. So I guess I'm really on board with what my prediction is. Look, I have faith that Notre Dame is going to do what they need to do. I think that senior day is going to rally the troops, so to speak. You and I are pretty similar here. We both think that Notre Dame is going to get into the 40s, and they're gonna stifle Georgia Tech. And I think that both coordinators, and we didn't really talk about these guys because we were talking about the players. I think both coordinators are going to come out with an aggressive game plan, and I think they need to. I think that the Notre Dame defense has been at its best when they've been aggressive. And I think the Notre Dame offense has been at its best when they run tempo and they're aggressive. And that's what I want to see from both sides of the ball.
Yeah, Vince, I feel like this is a game Notre Dame is going to control the trenches on both sides of the ball. I do. And I feel like I've looked back through the years there, even in 2016, there was at least one game where Notre Dame played a good 60-minute game. I felt like for the most part, they did that against Army. I felt like they played really well. I mean, they beat a 9-win Miami team in 2016. Like, I thought that was a game where, Miami kind of clawed back late, but there was the one punt return. Outside of that one play, offensively and defensively, I thought Notre Dame played really good football that day. The special teams was trash, but and they made mistakes. But offensively and defensively, it was strong 60 minutes. Even that year, there was a game where you could look at that they just dominated from start to finish. We haven't had that game yet this year. They haven't.
Agreed.
And even Navy, the offense came out and sputtered for the first quarter and a half of the game, right? They're due. They're going to have one, right? And I think these next two games, I think we're going to see Notre Dame really play its best football. Now, will that be enough to allow Brian Kelly to really put the pedal to the metal and drop the 50 spot on Georgia Tech? I don't know. He's going to have to show me he's willing to do that. But I think this is a game where Notre Dame is going to just dominate this football game. I went 42-17. And so you and I are very similar. I had 42-17. You sent me in your thing 42-13. We're very, very similar in that prediction. And so I think this is going to be a convincing game. I think Notre Dame is going to come out and start fast, control the trenches. I think they're going to hit some big plays in the pass game. I think they're going to shut them down on defense. And this is going to be that game where it's like, okay, so this is what Notre Dame is capable of looking like. Okay. And maybe that's just wishful thinking because that's what they need to do and show the committee that. But I just have a feeling that this Notre Dame team these next 2 weeks is going to really put a whooping on a couple teams. And then we'll have to see, that's all they can control, right? They can't control who gets beat and who's the upsets and all that kind of stuff. They can only control their own job. But I just think these next couple games, we're going to see Notre Dame really, really put the pedal to the metal, and as much a Brian Kelly version of putting pedal to the metal. And have two big wins. So, and I think it starts Saturday. I went 42-17. You went 42-13. Either way, moral of the story is I think Notre Dame wins and wins big.
Yep. Agreed. So make sure everybody, by the way, make sure you've got that notification bell clicked because we will be doing a post-game show after the game. And it just depends on how long it takes me to get back home from the stadium.
Yep.
So I'm in constant contact with Brian, and we try to set the show for when I'm going to get home, chance to catch my breath, and then we get rolling.
I did want to put up this comment before we leave. Toe Jam says, BD, With 10,325 in hand, did shopping feel more like Arnold Schwarzenegger emptying the Army surplus store in Commando, or Richard Pryor trying to spend $30 million in 30 days in Brewster's Millions? The fact that you used a Brewster's Millions reference, that's a great movie with Richard Pryor, John Candy, phenomenal
I've seen that movie. I like that movie.
That is a great reference. I feel more like Richard Pryor in
Yes.
Brewster's Millions, to be completely honest with you, where it's like, I got all this money and I got to spend it. And it's like, obviously we're spending it on smarter things than what Richard Pryor spent on, the iceberg. You know what I mean? Remember that one?
Yes.
It just says a lot about Vince and I talked about this before. It's a great problem to have. Like I'm kind of joking about it. I don't know. So it's a great problem to have, because there's so many more people that are going to be able to be touched this holiday season. That and when more people are saying, hey, we don't have a need for Thanksgiving, but we do for Christmas. And I was like, well, once we're done making sure everybody's been helped for Thanksgiving, and we have money left over, we'll definitely step up and help you out. So it's been great. And there was somebody earlier in the chat that talked about the Women's Care Center. I don't know a lot about that. I'll reach out to them. I'll ask Angela, usually knows about a lot of that stuff. But anyone in this area that has suggestions for different organizations that serve the needy, it doesn't have to just be homeless. It can be, vets in need. It can be families in need, whatever we can help provide food for. Email me at brian@irishbreakdown.com. I'm going to be, once I get off here, I'm going to spend the rest of the day on the phone, connecting with some people that we've talked to, making sure what the needs are. Ange and I are going to go out shopping again tonight for Faith Mission. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll get to it. So thank you all again very, very much for stepping up. And it was a fun week. It was a very, very, very fun week. And then we had one super chat that came up for Ryan Michael. You were speaking of Adamiola. Do you really think he leaves for the NFL? As of now, he isn't even listed as a top 12 D tackle in the first 5 rounds. I'm more optimistic that he's going to return now than I was a month ago. For whatever reason, right now, a lot of NFL scouts aren't seeing him the way that Notre Dame sees him and Notre Dame's opponents see him and I see him, which can end up being great for Notre Dame. But what I'll say is, from my conversations, I believe Jason is open to the feedback from the NFL. I think he and Notre Dame both were thinking he was going to leave because of how well he's played, but he's not going to leave just to leave, because his brother's going to be back next year. If the NFL tells him, hey, you're a 5th round pick, then I think he'll come back. If the NFL says you're a day 1, day 2 pick, then I think he'll leave. But right now, I can say with confidence that Jason is not focused on that. Jason is focused on Stanford, Georgia Tech, and Stanford, and then trying to get to the playoff. And then the rest of that will take care of itself down the road. And that is the one thing I've talked to a lot of different sources about. Hey, what are these? And they're like, you know what? Honestly, it's not even on their radar right now. They've got time to figure that out down the road. I do believe this team is starting to zero in. I do believe this team is starting to lock in. They've dealt with personnel losses and the flu. And I do feel like this team is really starting to really get into that narrow focus of do what we got to do, because they want to play for championship. And that's the thing I've learned. So that's a very exciting thing to see. So thank you for the super chat. Thank you, everybody that was part of the show today. This was a lot of fun. Again, like Vince said, we'll be back tomorrow. So like button, hit, subscribe, check, notification, get her done. And that way you'll know when we go tomorrow. So for Vince, I'm Brian. Have a great day. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Sign up for the message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com, and we will talk to you again very, very soon.